Hello, welcome back. Yes, Am I late? Am I early? It could be any one of those. It's Friday for me. This is my day off, and so I'm a little bit slow. Um, but we're going to be doing Strongholds. This is a player's guide. This is the intention behind this. This is a rerun of something I did a while back, but I have updated it. So there's a lot more information here compared to what there was before. I put up a poll because Wizards of the Coast has tried to create a Bastion system. So I put up a poll regarding the Bastion system. If you've seen it, you've seen it. If you haven't, you haven't. This is targeted at players, but there is a lot of information here for game masters because you have to have negotiation with a game master to have castles or strongholds. It's just a fact. Okay, you cannot eliminate them from the process. You cannot bind them to something written on a page by Wizards of the Coast. There's always going to be some change. So grab some food, some drink, get comfortable. This is very involved. There is a lot of stuff. I have added additional information. For those of you who wanted everything there is to know, this pretty much does that. Okay, so yes, settle down, get ready. This is going to be a bit of a ride. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Yes, this is everyone's guide to Strongholds in Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Now, I have run this before, but this is updated and involves a lot more information. So this is primarily intended to be a guide for players, intending to explain how to manage a stronghold, how to plan out a stronghold, how to actually manage a stronghold, the benefits of having a stronghold, castle, fortress, and it's aimed at top tier gameplay. That is the best time to do this, and I'll explain more about that. Dungeon Masters are provided with the basics and necessary tools to include strongholds in their Dungeons & Dragons 5e campaigns. I will give you that information. Players will have to do additional work with their campaign beyond level 10. When they're going to get a stronghold, when they gain a stronghold, this is probably the best time to do that. But it's not just the Dungeon Master doing the work. Players, you will have to do a lot of work yourself. Although Dungeon Masters will keep notes on strongholds, it is also recommended for players of a character in possession of a castle to also take accurate and honest notes. Otherwise, a Dungeon Master will simply not be interested in having castles included into their campaign. Player characters are masters of the realm between level 10 and level 16, with formidable reputations that make them famous, and they also attract powerful foes who will threaten the world or kingdom, which translates into needing castles, fortresses, strongholds to protect a strategic location, avoid political conflict with some sort of military deterrent, and that's what a stronghold will do, and nations at war. And you will be able to find that information on page 37 of the Dungeon Master Guide for D&D 5e. These are recommendations for negotiating with your Dungeon Master, so change what needs to be changed so you can get strongholds back into your Dungeons and Dragons game, and specifically D&D 5e. Planning out a stronghold. Now, access to a stronghold is always going to require Game Master or Dungeon Master discretion. It is always going to be the final say lies with them. The character classes in Dungeons & Dragons 5e that make sense to have a stronghold or a castle or a fortress, I would say tend to be the Barbarian, the Cleric, the Fighter, and the Paladin. But any class could be awarded a title of nobility or granted land to a stronghold or castle. The player characters need to seek permission from the kingdom's leaders to build a stronghold in the first place. Powerful leaders or a monarchy traditionally allowed strongholds to be commissioned. Although, and I'm going to say there are exceptions to this, but we'll get to that in a second. Additionally, player characters need to buy land or be given land in the form of a deed to build a stronghold. You need a place to put it. Now, land deeds can range in price from 100 gold pieces for a small piece of land where you could build a single tower or a castle keep, right up to 1,000 gold pieces, and really large estates might cost as much as 5,000 gold pieces or more. This is something that as a game master you're going to have to make a decision about. How big is that land going to be? Really, it's an arbitrary idea. Putting a price tag on it really doesn't matter too much. Nobility can actually grant a title of land or lease a region for construction so you can put a stronghold or a castle on it. Now, exceptions to this condition is the barbarian class, I would say, or a character that takes a stronghold, a fortress, or a castle by conquest or force, where they actually lay siege to it and take it by force. Then you don't need to worry about those sorts of things, and a different dynamic is going to be set up. The best time for a stronghold construction to begin is really around level 9 or 10, but it can be started sooner if the adventure will allow you to do so and the game master actually approves of this. How a player character gains a castle or a fortress can be achieved a few different ways. They can construct them over time. They can renovate an existing castle that is broken down. They can be gifted it by a monarchy, a castle that already exists. They can purchase a castle. They could inherit that castle. They could just find the castle abandoned, or they could go through the process of conquest or sieging an existing castle. So there's a couple of different ways of doing this. If a castle is taken by force or discovered, it will first require its inhabitants to be cleared out, which is the first step towards a stronghold. And it requires an adventure for the player characters to journey through. So as a game master, if they're going to clear out a castle, make sure you've got something ready to go. Building a stronghold. What are the maths behind that for D&D 5e? Now, I'm going to cover 3 different strongholds for you. There could potentially be more, but these are the 3 that I think will relate to you. First off, a fortified tower or keep. That will take about 100 days to build and cost about 15,000 gold pieces in materials and labour. A small castle will take about 400 days to build and cost 50,000 gold pieces in materials and labour. A large castle or fortress takes 1,200 days to build and will cost you 500,000 gold pieces in materials and labour. You might have noticed I have included the labour cost. That is all part and parcel of it. You do not need to try to figure that out. It's already done for you. A fortified tower or keep can be assumed to be a single ground floor room with 2 levels and a roof with a battlement on top for troops to fire arrows from. So in terms of the size, that's really what you're looking at. Now, with regard to a small or large castle, there are no specifications on their size, and they have to be determined by a game master as to what is reasonable and why have they done this for D&D 5e. 1, to reduce complexity. There are lots of different ways of figuring out the structure and type of castle you're dealing with. It is an arbitrary thing. You do not need to necessarily have anything set down in stone. Okay, unless you're insisting on drawing out the castle yourselves, it is not necessary to have the exact dimensions of a small castle or a large castle. If you're looking for that, make something up. That's it. That's all you need to worry about. It's more a narrative aspect. Because castles and fortresses take so long to actually build, they take a lot of time. They are valuable to other factions. Castles need to be protected during the construction process by a player's character or the player characters and by hired troops. And primarily, most of that work will be done by hired troops. Temporary wooden fortresses, or a fort, can quickly and cheaply be built, and they should be constructed near to the site of your new stronghold construction. So before you build your stone castle or stronghold, build a wooden fort, then build the castle, because the wooden fort can be put up for as cheaply as 4,000 or 5,000 gold pieces, and then can be deconstructed and the materials used once the castle is mostly complete. The player characters should not be required to be present during the stronghold construction or the castle construction or when the castle is being built. The player characters being there is there only to make decisions about something that needs to be done, and most of that is going to get done probably before you even actually start construction. Who actually builds the castle or stronghold? Not the player characters. They could, but they're not necessarily going to be the best suited individuals. Expert masons and carpenters are the best suited individuals to actually complete the task of building your stronghold or castle. So there is conflicting information in the Dungeon Master Guide for D&D 5e. Ignore that nonsense. Forget about it. Okay, I don't think the players are the best people to be building the castle walls and buildings. Somebody else who's an expert, and that's all they ever do is build castles and structures. They're the ones that are the experts, not the player characters. Managing a stronghold. How do you go about doing that? Player choices are responsible for arranging protection, maintenance, repair, recruiting a castellan. This is somebody who actually looks after the castle or the stronghold. Hiring troops not necessarily need to be done by the player characters, but they can. You can actually assign that to somebody else. Protecting the peasants surrounding the castle or the stronghold is certainly part and parcel of the player making decisions, but you can assign that to somebody else. Collecting taxes from the peasants working on their land, you get somebody else to do that. You just need to decide who's going to be doing that. And then the Dungeon Master or Game Master will follow your lead as you are the player of a character. Now, I will say this, that when a castle has a calamity occur, that the chance of success will certainly increase when the player characters are present. But with regard to day-to-day functioning and small attacks against a castle, you do not need to have the players there to remedy those problems. That's why you hire troops to be in the castle in the first place. Okay, all right. Player characters have peasants that live on the land, usually surrounding a castle, who will generate an income for that castle upkeep, and they will also, those peasantry will use the castle as protection from invading armies, so they can come inside the walls to avoid being attacked and killed from raiders and monster assaults. So there is a reason for having the castle. It will generate money, and quite a lot of it. The monthly maintenance cost for a fortified tower or keep, which is usually just a 2-story tower with a roof with battlements, is going to cost you about 750 gold pieces per month. Okay, but that's the cost monthly, but 25 gold pieces per day. I would suggest stick to the monthly cost. The daily cost is just too cumbersome. You'll find the information for this on page 127 of the Dungeon Master Guide for D&D 5e. So that is a fortified tower or keep with 2 levels. Now the monthly maintenance cost for a small castle is 3,000 gold pieces per month, but it is also 100 gold pieces per day, and that is also on page 127 of the DMG. The monthly maintenance cost for a large castle or a large fortress is 1,200 gold pieces, and that's for a month, and 400 gold pieces per day, and again on the same page 127 of the DMG. A fortified tower or a fortified keep that's the 2-level tower basically, requires 10 skilled individuals, and most of them will be troops. That's it. Maybe you have somebody who's a cook or a cleaner, and that's it. It's not a big dwelling. A small castle requires 50 skilled individuals, who again are mostly troops, and they will have about 50 untrained hirelings to perform some menial tasks such as cooking, cleaning, repairs, things like that. Now, a large castle or fortress requires 200 skilled individuals, mostly will be troops, and 100 untrained hirelings to perform those menial tasks, the same things I just described for the small castle. A player character can receive a quarter of the monthly maintenance cost and profit for the stronghold, which is collected by your followers or hirelings who work the castle, and the information around that is kind of scattered between page 127 to 129 of the DMG. Now, I will say this. The guidance and information provided in the Dungeon Master Guide with regard to income off a stronghold, a castle, or a fortress, or a keep is completely useless to you, because they actually sort of indicate that the chances are you'll make very little money. My calculation is very simple. It's 1/4. A castle will make money. If you're doing it right and you're not messing things up, and there's no reason to suspect that you will as a player, you're going to make money. Castles make money. That's why you have them in the first place. Now, a simple variant rule that you could use for calculating the profit per month earned from your stronghold would be 20% plus roll a 10-sided dice, add that to that 20%. Okay, so if I roll a 6 on my 10-sided dice, I add that 6 to 20, becomes 26%. So I calculate it as 26% of the monthly maintenance cost for my castle. Your castles should always be making a profit, and there's no point having them otherwise. There really isn't. Player characters must protect the peasants on their land or lose the title to that land. They could lose the land deed, they could lose the castle and fortress in a number of different ways depending on the story or your adventure. Now, there's another problem that can crop up, and that is mistreating your peasants. So if you fail to protect your peasants, okay, if you lose your peasants because they're getting killed, they can't generate income, hence you cannot pay for the castle, so you have to protect them. But if you mistreat your peasants living on the land around the castle, they will revolt, and it also means you will have to fight them off, meaning that you will have to kill your peasantry and subdue them. And if you subdue them and incarcerate them, they're not working, okay? And if you have to kill them, they're not working because they're dead. So you lose money financially for your castle, and you're going to wind up going into financial bankruptcy. So you must protect your peasants, and you must ensure you do not mistreat them so that they can actually work the land around your castle. These are very important things to consider. Stronghold sieges. So a castle under siege. It's going to happen. You need to accept that once you have a castle, this is the sort of thing that will happen. Armies of humanoids and monsters will potentially try to siege a stronghold to plunder that location for its strategic position. Also the wealth that it can generate. And in fact, the wealth that it exists. It is an asset. It's a physical asset, but also the potential to generate more revenue for the rest of the campaign. Like, this thing generates money. That's why you have castles. And you're going to wind up, once you have a stronghold or castle, probably having right throughout your campaign from level 10 to 20, there's going to be more sieges, not just one. Now, that doesn't mean that the only thing you're ever going to deal with is a siege, but they will occur. Now, player characters don't need to defeat the whole army laying siege to their stronghold or castle to be successful. You don't need to do that at all. In fact, that's probably unwise. Instead, what you want to do when you have your stronghold being laid siege to, you eliminate the military leaders who are laying siege to your castle. You attack their artillery weapons or catapults, trebuchet, whatever they have. Cannons, they may even have cannons. You want to get rid of cannons very quickly if you can help it. Supply wagons, anything that supplies the army laying siege to you, attack those supply wagons and supply lines. Siege equipment, any kind of siege equipment, whether it be their battering ram or siege towers, destroy those, target them, sabotage them before they even get a chance to be used if you can. A stronghold will require permanent protection from magic assault. One of the big factors when you're playing in a fantasy world is there exists magic. So you need to set up permanent protection from magic assault. Now, whether that is a spell that is laid across the castle, or whether that's ongoing spells that need to be reintroduced to ensure that you don't wind up with people scrying on you while you're in your castle, or what's going on inside the castle, or people using teleportation being the biggest problem, teleportation, or things that allow you to dig under the ground using magic or passing through a wall. These are all things that essentially can unwind and cause problems when it comes to magic. Also, infiltration. Magic can also infiltrate, and scrying I've already mentioned. Now, this is very, very complicated for a player and a game master to figure out. And this would require a completely separate video to actually explain that process. And I will probably get there, but that'll be under the topic of a different video. And the one that you want to look for is magic towers. Everyone's Guide to Magic Towers should give you a good base for figuring out a lot of that stuff. It's related to magic towers, but you can apply it to your stronghold or castle. Now, dragons, flying monsters, will be drawn to the farmsteads for food surrounding a stronghold or castle. So you need to construct ballista. You need to have longbow archers on the castle walls. This is absolutely vital. To fight off the aerial assault that you're going to be dealing with, you need to have something like that. And that's not just dragons and flying monsters. There are also flying ships and balloons, things that can get into your castle going over the top of the walls. So ensure you have some sort of ground-to-air weaponry. Also, catapults, trebuchet, hurling rocks at a castle wall will fracture the stone and brick on the outer wall. Brick is better than stone. If you have small bricks, you can replace them. A stone wall is a bit of a problem because when they crack, how do you actually patch that up? It's a lot more difficult. I guess you could say we're going to concrete that section. You're better to have brick over stone walls, solid section stone walls. But if you're dealing with a cannon, it's much worse. So include some sort of artillery war machines in your castle. That means have your own trebuchet, catapults, or cannons mounted on the walls to fire back at artillery units targeting your castle wall. Because if you have a breach to your castle wall, it's all over. They're going to come streaming in. Now you can find information on page 255 through to 256 in the DMG, the Dungeon Master Guide for D&D 5e, and that covers siege equipments and sieging very briefly. It's not a lot of information, but at least it's something. Now, another thing that you can do to ensure that things like catapults and trebuchet will not be able to break down the walls of your castle is to put something in front of it, okay? Whether that be a great huge mound of earth so that it actually blocks the line to your wall, maybe that's something you do. Also, do not forget something like a moat. Moats are really important as a defensive mechanism for a castle or a stronghold because you have to get past the moat, okay, and drawbridges, anything like that. Anything to make it more difficult to get to the castle wall. Stronghold benefits. What are the benefits of having a stronghold? A stronghold can include a wide range of additional facilities or features with all manner of benefits. They also have a functional use. It's not just about giving you more, it's about these are the necessities. Okay, these are necessities that you need to have a stronghold or castle actually function properly. Castles will act as a defensive home base, usually on the border of civilization, but they can also be in a vital strategic location or position, such as close to a city, where there is peasantry to actually look after, They might be on a coastline, but usually you're going to have them in a vital strategic position or on the border of the civilization that you're connected to. Now, this allows player characters to explore much more remote locations and dangerous locations from their stronghold by being able to move out and come back near when it gets dark. So it's actually very good for exploring, doing it from a castle, particularly on the borderlands. Keep on the Borderlands has its own place in history for D&D. There's a reason why that adventure exists. Now, castles, fortresses, and strongholds generate a consistent income from profit made from the peasantry. That's one of the reasons to actually have it. Ultimately, it's very important to have something like that. Also, a stronghold is a symbolic political status symbol. It's a symbol that shows that politically you have some sort of status, but it also, a stronghold grants significant practical power that you can apply to the world. You are actually now affecting the world far more than just going from tavern to tavern, getting drunk and going on adventures and stealing treasure from monsters. Now, castles create stability within a kingdom or a nation. And the fact that you are looking after a castle means you've become more important ultimately in the kingdom and that nation because you are now part of the infrastructure of it. Smithies or workshops attached to a stronghold or a castle are absolutely vital because they are involved in forging new armor and weapons, but also the repair of weapons and armor. You need to have a forge or smithy attached to your castle, particularly if you're dealing with a small or large castle. Something like a fortified tower or a keep which just has 2 levels, you probably won't have a smithy. Instead, you'll have to commission all that work from somewhere else and bring that equipment in when you're ready to use it. Gardens and a greenhouse within the walls of a large castle can be used to grow food and produce herbal ingredients for potions. You might even want to include gardens and greenhouses with a small castle, but I would say with a small castle you might find the grounds or the space within the walls of that castle are too small to actually allow for a decent garden or greenhouse. It would have to be a very small plot of land, whereas a large castle you get much more land. Laboratories and workshops are useful for creating magic items and potions. So things like the wizard, sorcerer, warlock, they're all going to find these super useful for creating those sorts of things if you're allowing that in your game as a game master. And this is one of the things that players will want to do, is to use that for that. That's why you have them. You put your laboratory or workshop inside your stronghold. A gymnasium or a training hall can be used to strengthen military characters. So they can actually go and pump some iron, get in there in the gym and actually build up those muscles. But they can also learn new combat techniques by having access to a gymnasium or a training hall of some kind. And again, you can include that in a large castle. Maybe more difficult to include it in a small castle, but if you do have a small castle, you can still use the courtyard area as your training area for your player characters and anybody else that you're training up in the process. Now, libraries, archives, and studies can be used to perform research, learn new languages, and expand spells known. Okay, this is one of those things where wizards are going to probably want to use that particularly to expand that aspect of it. But performing general research or advanced research in magic and other areas, even history, this is where libraries, archives, and studies shine. And of course, it's always useful to have a new language that you can use to communicate with. A chapel can be used for worship and spreading the religious beliefs of, say, the cleric or the paladin, whatever deity that they worship or they fall under. So there is a use for your chapel. A stable inside the walls of a fortress grants access to horses, which means you can travel faster from one place to another. So there's a good reason to have something like that. Now, stables are probably going to apply to a small castle and a large castle, but you won't usually have a stable with just a fortified tower or a keep which just has 2 levels. It's just not going to work. You may have a stable on the outside of the walls, but it's not protected, so somebody can steal your horses. Strongholds attract markets. When you put in something like a castle or a fortress, okay, they will always attract a marketplace because one, you have security. People don't have to worry about things being stolen because there are troops nearby who can actually keep an eye on things. And when you make your stronghold available to markets, it opens up the potential for trade, allowing one castle to actually trade with another castle or another stronghold or another nation. So you want to have that taking place if you can. Now, my miscellaneous recommendations with regard to strongholds in your game is historically Dungeons & Dragons character classes had features built into them for top tier games to help players and the game master. But this has actually been removed from the game for decades. D&D 5e doesn't have anything like that. Neither did 4e or even 3.5. It really only existed in advanced Dungeons & Dragons and to a certain degree in basic, but maybe not quite the same. Okay, those aspects did exist in the past. It was an aspect of playing at high level, and it has now gone. Dungeon masters will need to incorporate significant downtime into a campaign. If you're going to have a stronghold, you need to include downtime so that people can work on their stronghold and get things done. Whether that's doing something inside the stronghold regarding the benefits that I just talked about, or whether that's simply just managing things, you've got to give them some sort of downtime. Will players actually use that downtime? That is the biggest question. As a player, I need to tell you now, when you are given downtime, do not waste it. Okay? Players need to utilize their downtime to strengthen the stronghold, to make it more advanced. You do that between your adventures. Okay? That's what downtime is used for in the first place. So do not squander it. Now, followers and hirelings become absolutely essential for a stronghold owner. So if you own a castle or a fortress or even a keep, you need to actually rely on your followers and hirelings, whether that's during or between adventures, for every aspect in terms of maintenance and defense. So make sure you keep equipping your castle or stronghold with new troops and hirelings and followers as you lose them should they be attacked or lost during a battle. Do not just leave them. Okay, your castle is too valuable. Potentially a party of characters can have more than one castle or stronghold if there's a large number of martial characters. So the stronghold system that you're utilizing in your game needs to be simple. I have tried to provide you with a very simple process. Even Wizards of the Coast has also tried to provide you with a very simple process in the Dungeon Master Guide for D&D 5e. I would not say that the new Bastion system they provide you with is simple. That is not a simple system. Probably not particularly useful to you. Aspects of it may be. So you need to have a simple system. Alternatively, you could find that different player characters could simply share the same stronghold or castle. You don't have to have a stronghold or castle for every single player character at the table. You could simply share the same stronghold, which of course would make it a larger building, makes it easier to actually construct it. You can get it done faster potentially, but also the biggest factor is not getting it constructed faster, is you can share the load in terms of the cost of building it, particularly if you do have to build it or renovate it. Those are sorts of things you need to consider. So that's everything I have to say on Strongholds. Everyone's Guide to Strongholds for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And this is an expanded version of what I've done in the past. I'm hoping this was useful to you. I want to thank you for watching and listening. I want to thank all of my patrons who really support me so I can keep running this sort of thing. And I hope this was really useful to you. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Wow. So I just talked for what has to be almost half an hour straight. I told you there was a lot of information. There's a lot of information here. Many of you have heard of a lot of this stuff before. If you've ever been part of my live streams, which we do literally every 2 months, we talk about castles. And so somebody had got quite upset because I had a live stream version of this called Everyone's Guide to Castles and Fortresses for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, but I did not have an edited version, and I hadn't done that because YouTube had changed what they were doing, and I couldn't take the footage off YouTube and then cut it down because the footage was really substandard. Like the audio was all rightish, but the video was terrible. And since I've been, broadcasting live in 4K and doing my videos in 4K, unless it's one of the Game Master roundtables, then it's of a lower quality, and I think that's only 1280 by 720, which is kind of like the lowest level you really want to do if you're going to do YouTube. I didn't really want to release that from the YouTube version, even if I downloaded it and cut it. So I decided to redo it and to add in a whole lot of additional stuff that I thought was going to be useful to you. Hello, Agile Monk. How are you? How's it going? Agile Monk is a moderator. He's been with me for a while. How are you? I hope you're feeling better. AD&D, downtime is and can be so beneficial. Yes, downtime is definitely very, very beneficial. So let's go through the chat. And I see a number of individuals who have been with me for a really long time. And I'm really glad to see that you're able to make it today. Great. So Dan is a patron, been with me probably from the very get-go, and also a moderator. Thank you for being here, Dan. Okay, all right, so let's work our way through here. Hello, how are you doing, Bookbinder DM? I kickstarted MCDM's Strongholds and Follows, and it is excellent. So that's what I use. Well, that's fine. Look, you use whatever tool you want to use, whatever tool you think is going to be useful to you. And I've seen Strongholds and Followers. It's a very, very involved system. There's a lot of information there. If you want that level of complexity and you can handle it, no problem. How you run your games is up to you. I just wanted to do this and make it as simple as possible. Now, the documentation for this live stream, I was looking at it and thinking, do I actually release it on Patreon as just a Word document or a PDF, just a simple PDF or document? And I think I will actually release it onto Patreon because I did add in a whole lot of stuff and I did amend a couple of things that I had said in the past, so I'll put it up onto Patreon. Okay. And Dan is undecided with regard to so I had asked in the live stream, I asked the question as part of a poll. Will you use the Bastion system created by Wizards of the Coast? 13% said yes. That's really, really not good. As a Bastion system, Wizards of the Coast has got to do something about streamlining. No, 27%. But undecided, 53%. So what that tells me, and there's 7% just watching. So what that tells me about Wizards of the Coast Bastion system is it's too complicated. There's too much going on, or there's some problems, and I know I've seen some problems. People are already pointing them out. So feasibly, it's not the system that you want to use. So you'll wind up having to take something like that and refine it for yourself, provided you have time. But if you don't have time to refine Wizards of the Coast Bastion system, then you're never going to use it, are you? So this is why I say it's always good to have a system that works, gets the job done, but it's as simple as possible to implement. Whether that's for a Dungeon Master or Game Master or all the players. Well, you're from Canada. Bookbinder from Canada. Hello, how's it going? One of the things I didn't realize is there are a lot of people from Germany who watch my stuff. I did not realize so many people from Germany watch and Canada, but Germany seems to have been popping up quite a bit recently. Still, the majority of my audience seems to be American, but yeah, I didn't realize that. Hello, Robert. How are you doing? Now, let's see if I can get your surname right. Robert Callistel. Callistel? You're undecided. You're leaning towards probably not because I already have MCDM's strongholds and followers. Yeah, and of course, I would say that MCDM's strongholds and followers probably, since if you're dealing with a complex system, their system is pretty tight, right? Yeah, and I would agree that MCDM's strongholds and followers has probably done it better. So Wizards of the Coast has really got to lift their game. If they can't do it and be as good as strongholds and followers, they need to do it differently and make it simple, because that's not what something that strongholds and followers has done. They haven't actually made it that simple. So they need to go for a different group or different audience. It might be too much for my group at the moment. I don't advise that you look at something like strongholds if you're just new to the game. There's a reason why I kind of say level 10. In the past, you could pick up like a stronghold sooner because, well, one, you only had like level 1 through to 10 or level 1 through to 15. There weren't that many levels to your character. So there wasn't this huge progression of level 1 to 20. The game does break down at a certain point. So what it makes sense is once you're starting to get a bit of a reputation as a for your character gets a reputation, then yes, potential for using strongholds makes a lot more sense. But then again, it also depends on the types of adventures. If you find a castle that's in ruins and you want to repair it, well, why not? If you conquer a castle, then why not? Why not take over its management? I have a friend who wants to play solo adventure, and I think this will become a key element using MCDM's kingdoms and warfare, strongholds and followers. Well, yeah, well, certainly. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with solo adventures, so I can't give you that much advice on it. But certainly it adds another element to it. It would be probably nice to do that, once they've sort of done a bit of, what do we call it, bumming around or vagabond murder hoboing, as they crawl from one pub to the next, killing monsters and taking their shit. That's really what a lot of us like to do. It's letting off steam. Okay, it's letting off steam. It's all right, but there's a point where it kind of it needs to shift into something else, right? So that's when you bring in your stronghold. Hello, Pale Rider. How you doing? Dingens wish to get a castle. Oh yes, I suppose you could get a castle by just granting a wish. That would be a way. Mind control a purple worm to make your stronghold in a mountain or totally underground. Well, that's an interesting idea. That's quite a cool idea. Now, I'm not doing a video on that. I've already done a video on ideas for strongholds. Like, there's a bunch of different ideas. I did a live stream. I think there's an edited version as well. And if there isn't, you're probably going to tell me. Please tell me there isn't please tell me there's an edited version of the Strongholds idea video live stream that I did. Because I don't want to do that again. It was long as well. I'm trying really hard not to have really long presentations. Yes, the players should be out of the adventure, and the DM Dungeon Master Guide punishes the players for not being there. What are we talking about? Yes, the players should be out adventuring, and the DMG Dungeon Master's Guide punishes. Yes, so what you're talking about in a bookbinder is the Dungeon Master Guide does not do a good job of inspiring players to actually go out, do your adventuring, and leave somebody else to the actual construction of their stronghold or castle. The players being there is not really going to change much because they're not very good at building stuff. What they do is they do adventuring. That's their expertise. It's not building structures. So actually requiring, slowing down the buildings process. I think it says something like, if your players aren't there during the castle construction, then it takes 3 times as long. So instead of what for every 1 day it would normally take, it now takes 3 days. Don't do that to your players. It's a ridiculous idea. It's quite stupid. And, Wizards of the Coast does good stuff sometimes, but they also do a lot of very silly stuff. It makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, you get experts to build castles and strongholds, not the player characters. It's a really weird way of seeing this. You hire a contractor and they do the work for you. All right. When running Waterdeep Dragon Heist, the Trollskull Inn is treated as a stronghold MCDM style. Yes, yep. You could. I mean, I guess when I say stronghold, I'm really thinking in terms of a castle, a fortified tower, a keep, or a small castle, large castle fortresses, things like that, rather than an inn. I'm certainly, that topic is something I would like to talk about in the future, but right now that's what I'm focusing on, is just the fortified structure, okay, rather than that. But yeah, you can treat it like that if you want to. It's up to you, you know. But this is not what this conversation was intended to be. My lord, your griffins keep eating our horses. Exactly. Make sure you keep your horses undercover. Otherwise, the griffins are going to come and eat them all. What's it? My moat will have weighed down the zombies to grab and pull down anyone swimming across. Yeah. Put your moat in. Make sure you have a moat. And one of the horrible things was they used to throw feces and piss into the thing. So even if you got across the moat and survived that, you know, and you might wind up dying from the infections and the horrible diseases growing in that thing. So you won the castle and died a few months later. Yeah. What else you got here, Pale Rider? How about an iron walls laid horizontal around the stronghold with lightning rods, maybe? Oh my gosh! What are you trying to electrify? You're putting an electric fence in around your stronghold. God, oh dear. All right. Okay, so John, you are feeling better. I'm glad to hear it, John. Yeah, you had me worried there for a bit when you were mentioning your issues. So if you're feeling better, that's good news. Now I guess it's just a process of trying to figure out how to pay the bill, right? Country, hello, Country245. How are you? We have Overboard. Hello, Joe. So Overboard is a patron and also a moderator. Thank you for being here. Actually, that's right. Joe had discontinued Patreon because Patreon was messing him around. I'd forgotten about that. So I think he's just a moderator now, if I remember right. I can't remember. I remember we had a discussion about it. In any case, thank you for being here. I don't know if you'll ever use it, Fred. Depends on your players. Yeah. Look, I put these things here. You do not have to use them. It's really another option. I'm just about options, really. As you might have discovered over the years, most of what I do is lists of options, and then explaining how to apply those options. That's all I do, really, in many respects. Noroak, hello, Noroak. How are you? Noroak is a patron. Thank you for being here. And Pale Riders. Okay, all right, okay. Moving past. Yeah, so Country245, I'd probably use the Dungeon Master Guide rules. And I incline to do the same thing myself. I just make slight adjustments. So instead of calculating maintenance cost by day, I want it by month. That's why I've recalculated it. I just multiply the day value for your maintenance cost, multiply it by 30. 30 days in a month is about right. It's close enough. I know some months have more or less, but you don't need to worry about that sort of stuff. It's not a simulation game, okay? It's just a role-playing game. If you want a simulator, stick it into a computer and turn it into a program, a computer program of some kind. You don't have to do that to yourself. What do you got here, Noroak? I need a drink of water. I need to get off very quickly because I am... Hello, Fred Huber. Fred Huber is also a patron. Thank you for being here. I have to jump off pretty quickly because I'm going to be doing a live stream in about 2 hours. And I probably should give you a link to this because we'll be playing basic Dungeons & Dragons or Beck Me D&D. It's the Halloween special that is running on Wally DM's channel, and if I can just find the link, I'll chuck it in now before I forget. I don't know why I didn't make sure that I I should have redirected it to Wally's live stream, because that's where I will really want you to be. If you want to see me potentially die as a character or just hang out, this is the place to be. So I'll put that link in the chat right now. So Norok, I tend to just give my players a base and let them customize it as they like. Fair enough. I don't use a set stronghold rules, just improvising ones, which is fine. I know some people want a bit of guidance. I know, Norok, that you're quite capable of developing and establishing anything, whether it's creative or whether it's tools. I know you're quite capable of making your own tools. I know not everybody can do that, though. Yeah. So this is why I made this up. And really, I've borrowed very heavily, if not repeated, many of the things already stated in the Dungeon Master Guide, just with a little bit of refinement, really. What do you got here, Country? I'm going to give my players the deed to the Red Brand's hideout after completing the Lost Mine of Fendelver. Great idea. I think that's a great idea. Because, can I make a suggestion, Country? Don't just give them the deed to the Red Brand's hideout. It's not really the deed to the Red Brand's hideout. Give them the deed to Tressendor Manor, because the Red Brand's hideout is just the cellar to the old manor. And then they can rebuild the manor if they want to. My players did that in our game, and they had a great time. They after rebuilding the Tressendor Manor, and incorporating the Red Brand hideout as the cellar underneath, and doing all their renovations, they decided to rebuild the town, and they put a wall around it, and they were even starting to think about doing a castle. But things developed from there, so it didn't quite work out. But they did have a castle that they were lining up to do some renovations for. What do you got here? Hello, Derp. Derp is also a patron. How are you doing? I use 35 days per month. Well, yep, you can use 35 days. I think 30 is fine. And 1 day between months. I see. Okay. All right. The puzzles are a bane to most parties. The puzzles are a bane to most parties. Well, I'm not... Look... I will admit, I and AJ are not, both me and AJ and even Mark are not great at puzzles, and I'm sure we'll figure out getting through this, because Wally DM tells me that Fred Huber gave us the answer in the live chat. We just weren't paying attention. So I've got some homework to do. Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Fred. Fred Huber. I got some homework to do before I start that. In basic, the elves get the animals around the strongholds as friends, as long as the elves treat them well. Sure, yeah. I use a 3-moon system that tells the hour, the day of the week, and the day of the month. Oh my lord. Yeah, lots to rebuild. Kill or keep the Northic. Yeah, the Nothic. Yeah. Well, I mean, that Nothic is such a crazy character. It really is. Anyway, this was fun. As you know, usually on a Friday, when I do something like this and I'm not doing redesigning something or designing something, the live stream is quite short. So it's like an hour and then I finish. Because I've got to make sure that I don't mess my voice up and I can't continue. So... that's part of the reasons why we're going to be finishing fairly swiftly. But if you had anything else you wanted to say, now is the time. As for next week, same day, same time, what will I be doing? We'll be looking at the Ranger, and I'll be remastering the Ranger. For those of you who are unhappy with the Ranger, I do not like everything the Ranger does. I feel like it missed its mark in many respects. And so I am very much one of those people who are like, we've got to do something about this. So I will absolutely be looking at doing something with it, because I think it needs to have something else there. And yeah, that's really my intention. So for those of you who are wondering, will I be remastering stuff? Absolutely. So you solve all the puzzles, Fred. So I do have Wally DM's puzzle journal right in front of me. Much to my surprise and much to the glee of Wally, he found out that Chris Perkins purchased his book recently, and then put it up onto X, or what used to be called Twitter. Pardon me. Um, Hello, how's it going, Boss Bully Boy? Boss Bully Boy, how are you doing? So what do you got here, boss? Harmon Koss snatched the Nothic and used it as an imprisoned seer. Did he? Is that what you've done in your game? Nice, nice, love it. Good news. All right, I'm going to end this poll because I need to get out of here so that I can get organised. You will see me probably being a complete egg, and probably wearing something ridiculous on my head. Probably won't be this, it'll be something else. But anyway, I'll drop in that link to that live stream I will be in a few hours, and I better get going so I can get organised. I'll let you guys have a good day. Yeah, I'm going to be obviously back in a couple of days, and we'll continue on our program. But I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who showed up in the live stream, who's been watching and listening. Hopefully you did find it useful. I want to thank all of my patrons on Patreon, everybody who's been supporting me. It really does help a lot. I do appreciate that. I want to say thank you to, hopefully I get everybody's name, but I don't know. I want to thank Boss Bully Boy for being here, Country245, Fred Huber for showing up, Pale Rider, of course, Noroak, Overboard, who's been here. How's it going, Joe? I want to thank Derp, Agile Monk, Dan for being here. Is there anybody else? Oh, that's right. Bookbinder. Thank you, Bookbinder, for being here. And Robert, I appreciate you being here as well. And if I've missed your name, it's because I can't find your name anymore. So anyway, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, maybe include a castle or a stronghold in your game. Or keep rolling those 20s.